Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hey Nonprofits presented by HGA Fundraising. Head over to hgafundraising.com if you want to check out anything that has to do with fundraising. You need items for an upcoming event, coaching session with Jason. As a matter of fact, I'm joined by Jason. He's my business partner, my best friend today. And I thought it'd be really, really cool if we talk about our background in fundraising and what got us into the space in the first place. I don't know if we've shared like little pieces of our origin story. It's actually kind of fun. It was a longer episode, but really, really cool. I think you'll all enjoy it. We talk about Jason's 30 years in the fundraising space. We talk about how I didn't know anything about fundraising when I first started. I just knew there was a need for some really great items like the ones that we offer. And whatever I missed in understanding fundraising, I made up for enthusiasm. And here we are now. And you know, without getting too sentimental, how amazing of a journey it's been. Thanks to you all. Thanks to the folks on our team. Thanks to the folks that we've had the good fortune of working with over the last, number of years that we've been open. It's been really, really, really special. It's so much of it is rooted in gratitude that we have. That's the G in HGA, as a matter of fact, stands for gratitude. And so I think you'll really enjoy the story. We talk about how Jay was going to be a brain surgeon. I'm so thankful that he's not a neurosurgeon. He's a fireman. He's a helicopter pilot, all these things, my background in sales, all that stuff, and how that led us to where we are now. So thankful for everyone tuning in to another episode of Hey Nonprofits, Raise More Money. I think you'll really enjoy this one. I hope you do. I really, really appreciate this medium. I don't know why I've gravitated towards it over the last, 9 years. I started listening to one particular podcast that I don't even listen to anymore, which is really the way it goes, right? Man, oh man, and obviously, people are starting podcasts left and right. I totally get it. There's still room for good ones, that's for sure. Yeah, I enjoyed that. What was so funny, we had that conversation with this Pat fella, Jay, and he was talking about typical things that we know, but really good reminders. And it was so funny because he has no idea, of course, the conversation that you and I are having now about how we got into the space. And he was talking about just not overthinking it, not scripting, not being afraid, obviously, and getting over the fear, camera angles, iPhones, just grabbing the phone and actually just doing. And he was like, I didn't even ask him the question. That's why I told you he was so keyed into what nonprofits needed to hear about sharing their message on video, because that's his business. And we can, handwritten letters are great and all these other things are all great. And you have to have a nice collection of all of these methods for getting attention for volunteers and donors and supporters and all that stuff. He said something really, really fascinating where it's like, if you don't know where to start by telling your story. Start by telling, and he said, and he went more in depth. It was really uncanny. He said, start by telling where you began. And it made me think about what you're always saying about, this is what we've done, this is what we're doing, and this is what we're going to do. And it's like, those are just really great compasses, you know what I mean? For when you're thinking about, telling your story, sharing these messages, sharing, once again, we'll get into it. But we're going to share how we got into fundraising. And I don't know, I think you and I touch on it. I think people, if they've consumed our content enough, they realize that you've been doing this for 30 years. And if they consume our content, they know that, I'm constantly saying that you're the most prolific mind in fundraising. And you've taught me so much. Because I really didn't know what I was doing, actually. I'm not afraid to admit it. And who does know what they're doing when they're first getting going? But I want people to hear how we both got into fundraising. And I think it's a really cool story because we're still living it right now. And it's been exceptionally fun and fulfilling.
You said you're talking about, doing video and just start doing it. I think back to when we first did our very first webinar, we just did it. We really didn't know what we were doing. We just started doing it. And if you look at the content that we put out then versus the content we do now, it's completely different.
Yeah.
But, you do it for 150 times, you're going to get better.
Chops.
And you got to start somewhere. I mean, it's like when you started walking, you didn't pick up and just start, walking. You had to stumble around, fall down, get up. Everything you do, and, it takes time.
Yeah.
And you can't start out being an expert.
Good call. And
think about this. Michael Jordan, there was a time in Michael Jordan's life when he didn't know how to dribble.
He got cut from the high school basketball team. I didn't
Yeah.
even make
But I
it.
mean, you think about somebody who's so good at it, Tiger Woods, although he started when he was 2, there was a point in time whenever he couldn't swing a golf club. So you think about people that are the greatest at something, they had to get there, learn it. So learning by doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and it's so true. And I also, so I think a few things, and I've expressed a lot of these things to you because we talk so much, and I love our approach to things, and just the fact that we're entrepreneurs, and there's that piece of it that got us into the space as well. There's a layer of that, no matter what. But what I love about some of the characteristics of entrepreneurship is we don't wait around for people to give us permission to do anything, and we're good intended. Everything that we do has really, really great intentions for who we're working with and who we're trying to help and what have you. I mean, obviously, and I also think the fact that I keep using this moniker about you being the most prolific mind in fundraising. You have so much experience in business and starting things and ventures and meeting people, but you've taken these things that you've applied in and learned in business and applied them to fundraising. Like, I've never heard anyone talk about the people exercise at a committee meeting or a board meeting when it came to fundraising. And that was because you just understood people. So you're taking a lot of things that you learned, I'm assuming, of course, and I want you to tell the audience, that you learned in business, that you learned being a firefighter, that you learned being a husband and a father, and all these things, and applied them to, it's like, I almost feel like it's all culminating, like all this experience that you have is culminating in what people are getting, this version of you that they're getting right now, which I think is an exceptional version. Can you speak to that? Do you agree with that? Or
Well, it's funny when you say the most prolific mind. I think there's a lot of really brilliant people out there. So just to be categorized with them is fun. It's a great compliment. But I think the biggest thing that I bring to the table that I'm able to do is just my gift. People used to always say, "Oh yeah, you're just a natural salesman." No, I'm not. It's not at all. In fact, I have the opposite. I have all the call reluctance and all that stuff. I have all that. But what I can do is look at something and figure out how to make a process out of it. And that's because I've done everything the hard way my entire life. If there was a hard road to take, that's the one I would choose every freaking time, whether I intended it or not. It's just the way it would go. I think having learned those hard lessons and learned that, trial by error and by doing, I think that's probably also is I'm not afraid to just try. And when you do that, you start really kind of getting an idea and seeing stuff. And I'm able to observe what other people do and sometimes make it better.
yeah,
I knew how to do the people exercise, but I didn't call it that. I didn't know what it was. This is something I just kind of figured out because I heard people saying, well, who do we know? Well, nobody really knew how to do that and how to go about it because they'd all sit there in a room and start talking about how we get names. And I was like, well, we got to formalize it some way and make a process to draw that out. And over time, I just by trial and error, I kind of came up with it. Because there's another guy I know. That's what he would say. Well, we're going to do a people exercise. All right, let's all figure out, get our phones out. Well, they'd start trying to do it, and I just kind of help, more than that, just put it together. So really, that's it. I don't think there's any one thing that time that it all came on. I still learn stuff every day.
yeah,
I had somebody talk about a reverse auction the other day. I said, "Tell me about that. I want to know what it
yeah.
was." And in their case, they had 300 people. They'd sell 300 tickets to an event. Everybody got entered into this drawing, and they would draw out tickets until the very last 3 people, and the last 3 people got a prize.
I love it. It's
I thought it was
totally
kind of a
great.
cool idea. I thought it was
Yeah,
a clever idea. It was something different. And, so there's, I think, a couple things. I got started at 23. I was 23 years old. I was an auctioneer. I don't know any kind of auctioneer. I was a beginning auctioneer. And I got asked to do some charity events. And I went and helped and sold. I did a deal at a state fair for a local rock station. And they were doing a deal for literacy. And they called it the rock auction. And I got up there and I sold a guitar and I sold a couple of other things, odds and ends, and some records and some cool, memorabilia. And that was it, to a bunch of yelling, screaming people at a fair that, it was kind of a weird setup. And that was like the first charity event I ever
were you
did.
hooked?
And then I did it. Well, I was hooked on auctioneering. I really didn't. The fundraising part really didn't kick in until about a year later. And a guy called me and said, "Hey, I've got an auction. I can't be there, but can you come and do it? I heard you're a pretty good bid caller. Could you go and do it?" And I said, "Sure." Well, I had to go rent a tux because I didn't have one because it was a black tie affair. So I went and rented a tux, had to buy my wife a dress because she didn't have a dress to go to a formal gathering. So we had to do that. So this thing's costing me money and I'm doing it for free. And I got up and I just kind of caught lightning in a bottle and we sold and they raised a lot of money. And I didn't even know what I'd done. I just did what I knew how to do at bid calling. And that was back, 30 years ago. It's been over 30 years ago, really, 32 years. And what I learned though over the years is how much the industry has changed, because back then it was kind of a novelty. Doing a charity gala and an auction was a novelty. It wasn't like there was one every, 5 every week. Nowadays there's a benefit on every corner every day, every other day. And,
True story.
So it was pretty much a novelty. So I got a free run at it. And then because a lady, that wrote a society section took a liking to me and she was on the committee of that event, everybody started calling her and asking who the auctioneer was. She started putting my name out. And that's kind of how it happened. And I didn't charge anything for probably the first 5 years. And then I just I charged something because then I didn't want them to realize that I was the free guy, because everybody would pay, they'd pay for everything else. And then, some people would think because you were free, you didn't have value. And I didn't want that to be the case. I was doing a car auction. They were paying me $1,000 a day to come do their car sale. And these guys want me to do it for nothing. I was like, well, that doesn't really work out. I want to help.
Yeah, that doesn't match.
And then, and half the time I'd give them the check back. So, but when things really changes whenever I started, people always thought that my whole business was about being an auctioneer. It really wasn't. I was in the telecom industry. And that's whenever I started, making some money and had disposable income and started becoming more philanthropic with my money, with what I was able to make. And I got asked to be on some committees and boards. And that's really whenever things changed for me. That's really whenever I got from, behind the microphone and was able to see what goes on behind and the work that goes into it and how hard it is. And I've always known, and then when you start writing checks and you start thinking about it and you start thinking about how somebody that's going to write a check for $10,000 and what they're thinking. Yeah. And it's probably not what you think it is. A lot of times it's just an impulse. Right. I think I could do that. I want to do it. I want to help. It's an emotional attachment.
Yeah, I want to help.
And the other thing that really became apparent to me is that people with significant capacity, a lot of people, the nonprofits, looked at them as if they were, movie stars or something, they were not accessible. It's like they look at them. Yeah. They look at them as though they're not accessible, but the reality is they're very accessible. You want to know what they're thinking, pick up the phone and call them. And so those are the things that started kind of lightening up in my mind. And then as I went through my entrepreneur career, still I'm in it, will be in it my whole life. And then, I never, because in fact, I had lunch with a guy today, a friend of mine who's an attorney. And I said, if you had told me 20 years ago that I'd be selling trips and travel to nonprofits to make money, I'd have said, you're smoking heroin. There's no way. And yeah, it's funny. And continuing to do the auctions and doing all that stuff. And then I realized what a need there was for this service, meeting you, Trevor. And that's kind of how I got here. It wasn't, it was not a straight line that I woke up one, and said, this is what I want to be when I grow up. I mean, it was a very crazy road. I came out of the telecom industry, owned 3 different telephone companies, an internet company, and had a telehealth company. So, to come and do this was kind of out of nowhere.
It wasn't top of mind, long story short. Yeah. It's funny. I do say that all the time because people ask, and inevitably they ask more and more as we grow. You said a bunch of stuff that is so poignant, to our journey right now, in the middle of it, our company growing, process, how much you've taught me about that, how you have a lot of gifts, but one of them is understanding, like you said, like, okay, we could do this, but I think we could do it better. And you twist these dials and we add people and they all really like you. And, and I shared this story recently, but it's, we're, on our team, it's like 21 people, right? And we said something recently where every single person, it seems like, is excelling, succeeding, happy, not leaving. It's not hard for us to keep great people And my struggles with managing people and things like that. And not, it's not the end of the world, but I can definitely get better about it. And I've really paid attention to how you do it. And and then here we are. And yeah, like you said, it's like 10 years ago, if someone would have said, hey, because I am sales, I do have a sales background, had some pretty good insight into hospitality, and that's how I ended up in the space. But if you would have asked me 10 years ago if this is what we were going to be doing, it would have said, really? That kind of sounds fun.
Well, that's literally what I told. That's what I said to
yeah.
Mike today when we were having lunch. I said, if you told me that I would be traveling around going and figuring out trips that we were selling to nonprofits, I'd have said, well, yeah, that's crazy. I said, who'd have thought it possible? But yeah,
That
it
sounds really
does.
fun.
Well, if you say it real fast.
Yeah. And helping. I think I think one thing about you and I that we're really good at identifying, especially like when we started the company, for sure, it's just like there's a need. There was a need for your tutelage, coaching. There was a need for these items. There was a need to talk about. There's a need for this podcast. There's a need for us talking about fundraising in the way that we do. If you vibe on it, great. If you don't, all the best, it's okay. There was a need for putting our best information, this information out for free. And that feels really, really good, right? When you can stumble, I use the term loosely, but when you can stumble upon something and use all your talents and gifts and uncover talents and things that you didn't even know you had, and provide this need that you can tell in a space is needed, it feels really, really good. It's a dream almost sometimes, right? I know we're caught up in the day to day.
Well, the whole thing with the need, and this is a real interesting thing for me to look over, like I said, the past 30 years and just all the people who I've come in contact with, because I've been around, you talk about a prolific fundraising mind. I've been around some people that were amazing. I mean, they were really, really good. A lot of the people, most everybody from back then, they're all retired, they're retired or maybe even not even with us anymore. And so
we've both been very fortunate.
But the way that they went about things, everything has changed so dramatically now from back, then. Back then, we were sending faxes. There wasn't an email.
Yeah.
And
right.
So it was all, everything was a phone. That's why, I always say your cell phone is, the most powerful fundraising tool, is because it is. Because all of a sudden, this is right at our fingertips. I have all that information. We say terms like, look through your Rolodex. Well, people used to really have a Rolodex. And that's how they kept track of all their numbers and the people that they had. And they had little note cards. I remember there was a lady had a stack of 3x5 note cards. And she had it in like a little, like you would see the little box with recipes. That's where she had her stuff all tracked. And she would open them back up and she had them layered by section, by donors. And that's how she would flip through there. And she would say, you need somebody to write a check for $5,000. She would go through her numbers and say, all right, here's the list. And we would go through and pull them out. And she would sit there and go, okay, you need to talk to this person. That's where she kept everything. She was really, really good because she understood the power of relationship and she documented it all really well. And she kept notes. And, now we have technology to do that, but that's where
smart lady.
Things have changed. It's a different time now because there are a lot of fundraisers. There is competition for attention. We hear people talk about it's a race for attention, and it is. And that's where why we started a webinar.
Yep.
We did a webinar not because we thought, well, we've got a bunch of stuff we want to talk and everybody wants to listen to it. We just saw that nobody was talking about it. Not really. Every webinar we saw was somebody was trying to sell something to somebody.
Right. And they're like slides, talking over slides. Wah, like Charlie Brown's teacher, I used to say affectionately. I'm using that term.
Yeah.
I was be like, wah, wah, wah.
Well, you could do that and people would start asking questions. They would go, well, how do I, because we're in the item, we're in the trips and experience business. So that's what we provide. But you start talking about that and they're like, well, how do I get the bidders in the room?
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation because if you don't have the right people in the room, it doesn't matter. You could have the best items in the world. Nobody's going to buy them.
True story.
And then and so we started learning what people needed and we got educated. We started, reaching out and talking to people and asking and talking and finding out what they did and how they did it and what was, the experience that they had and how did you get this relationship started? And, we interviewed people and talked to them. And I remember whenever Jan Peary came on and she talked about, she worked on a relationship for 5 years Never got a dime out of the guy for 5 years. But when he did, he came, and I think it was either like $25,000 or $50,000 was his first donation.
So cool. Yeah. Yeah. And sharing those stories and playing the long game and all these things that we talk about. We talk about that a lot. We implore patience. I'm not coming up with the 3 Ps here, but patience. I want to talk about purpose a little bit. And I want to, obviously, what we're passionate about and things like that.
Well, no, wait a minute. Now we're talking about how I got in this business. Now talk about how you got in this business.
I want to talk about that, but I also want to, let's make sure we come back to this too, because I want to know. I mean, because I know how I feel and I have a pretty good idea how you feel, but like this, what we're doing in this journey that we're on is giving me a tremendous amount of purpose.
Well, it's the funnest thing. You know, I've always been driven by that, what I wanted to do. You know, I started out as a young guy. I wanted to be a doctor, but for all the wrong reasons.
Yep.
I wanted to be a doctor because I thought they made a lot of money.
Yeah.
and that's why. And then I realized I was going to have to go to school for 12 years. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I became a fireman.
What kind of doctor, for the audience though, Jay, what, will you please disclose what kind of doctor you wanted to be? You weren't going to become a podiatrist. No offense to podiatrists.
No, I was going to be a neurosurgeon. I wanted to be a neurosurgeon because they made the most money.
That's Jason.
I'm not, I kid you not. That's what,
yeah.
Well, I grew up on a farm. So, you know, the people, what I thought rich people were doctors and lawyers. Now I've realized that
so
rich
funny,
people
dude.
hired doctors and lawyers.
You're so funny. And when I found that when we met and everything, and you're like, tell me that, and it wasn't because of greed. You just wanted to make a lot of money. You're born on. You're like, this is what my goals were. This is what I thought I wanted to do. And yes, you did become a fireman. I want to hear about that. And you're telling me all these things when we first met, and you're like, yeah, and I'm an airplane pilot, and you're not bragging. None of this is ego. You're just telling me, and I've owned a couple of helicopters. I'm a helicopter pilot too. And I'm like, you're a polymath. I was like, what? You're an alien because I've never met anyone like you before. And what the funny thing about it is, when you told me you wanted to become a brain surgeon, I remember we were driving in the car, and and the funny thing about it is, you could have, if you wanted to, you would have absolutely become a brain surgeon too, because I know you. It's just like, it's so funny.
I remember the day I made a decision that this wasn't going to be it. And I was sitting there thinking about it because I was really frustrated in a class, and I was taking a history class in college. And I was real frustrated with the professor because he wasn't good. I mean, I'm going to be quite frank. He just wasn't very good. I probably knew more about history than he did. And because I read a lot. And so I was real frustrated with that. And I was like, I've got to spend the next 12 years doing this stuff. And I know it's not all going to medical school. It's not that. And I've got several friends that are doctors. So,
yeah.
And so I was teasing him about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You go through that whole process about what you want to do. And what I realized, I was trying to do it for the wrong reasons. You know, you and I didn't start doing this, what we're doing now, to make money. I mean, we want to make money. That's not necessarily not an issue, but that wasn't the reason. The reason was because we saw a need. We wanted to be a part of it. We liked what we do, and we wanted to help people. And I think purpose, which ties into your whole part about purpose, is that's where a lot of times we see people missing the mark. They get so caught up in the work, it's in the tasks and the work, they forget the purpose. Because
they think a lot about the outcome, stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot more to our business than doing podcasts and webinars. I mean, it's in coaching. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. It's hard. And
it is actually.
I'm not
afraid to admit that.
Yeah. The hard part is, the way we get through the hard, at least I do, the way I'm able to do the hard part and accomplish that and to stay engaged and make that happen is because I know what it does at the end. I know the work we do about, the millions of dollars that are raised, and that because we hear all the missions that it's funding.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. Yeah. We think about it. That's for sure. We're obviously very, very invested in it, but I think, I think we'll start sharing more about how much impact we're really having over time, because I don't want to do that to pat ourselves on the back. I think we need to share that because it's just good to hear. It's good to, it's reassurance. It's all these things. But yeah, like you said, we never got in the space for money. You and I are both, I speak for myself too, but I mean, like, I'm a wild competitor. And when I got in this space, I didn't want to, I just was like, I want to create the biggest, we do this by helping the most people, correct?
Yeah.
But I was like, I want to take over.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to help as
Well, I remember, and that's why we laughed the first year we started when we really kicked it off. After everything had shut down and everything opened back up, and we were going. And I was like, "You're like, hey, we could do this." I was like, "Oh no, let's just slow down. Let's go
yeah,
slow. Let's go
yeah,
slow." Because we got to be able to take care of the clients and take care of their donors and take care, make sure we can deliver. Because I knew you were a sales machine, and you are. Talk about natural born. It just comes so easy to you.
yeah,
It's frustrating for me.
yeah.
I'll just tell you that's something that it's frustrating, not in a bad way, but I just sit back here and I go, golly, you just have it. And it's funny because I watch you and it just happens. You didn't know a flipping thing about fundraising and you started selling trips, calling people, and they did it. They did. I bought, because people wouldn't know this, but I bought trips from you.
You were my best client.
And that's how, because I, was doing this, and before we partnered up, I was buying trips from you. And that's why, because I just like doing business with you. You're easy to do business with you. And if you said something was going to happen, it happened.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, there was I keep saying these things over and over, to people that ask, and we'll say it on air, and I'll say it to you, and we're really getting each other's best version. So forgive me for repeating myself over and over and over again about that. But personally, I've been in some very high pressure sales situations growing up. I didn't even know I was a salesman until I got put in a sales job. Someone recruited me. I needed a real job.
Yeah.
Getting out of running, I dropped out of college and started running professionally, and this is a couple decades ago, right? But or close to it. And then, yeah, I had a bunch of sales experience, and I had some really cool experience in hospitality, and I understood what was needed in this space. And we decided to come to market with something, and I just did it myself. I didn't ask anyone for permission. So that was cool. I was really betting on myself and making this happen. What was cool was I didn't have to apply any pressure as that. There was no sales pressure. I didn't need to do that. I was really, at that age, man, I was really over it too. I would lie to myself and say things like, well, you're retired from sales. And I was like, no, then I got back on. I was like, no, you are what you are, and you need to own it. And the thing of it is, what I realized quickly when we started the company was I could be myself. This has been amazing for my professional life and my personal life. I didn't have to apply any pressure. I didn't have to be that cheesy sales guy. I really, really liked what I did. I really liked establishing these relationships. What I lacked in understanding fundraising, I made up for with enthusiasm and just an alacrity for reaching out to people and following up. And like you said, if you reached out, I answered, and stuff like that. And all these very fundamental things. And it's been so liberating, actually, all simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And there's bumps and things when you start a company and all that stuff, and life happens, and you grow in your family and all this stuff, and people that you come in contact with. But what was so interesting about this space and meeting you and all this is that I didn't have any business doing. I didn't have any business doing the amount of business that we did right away. And the people that I was like rubbing elbows with, you know what I mean? Like, I was kind of like shocked that like these organizations, the size of some of these organizations, reached out to me without having a ton of experience. And once again, that just solidified the fact that there was a need for what we were providing. And some of those things we still provide to this day, which is very, very cool to see. And then to seeing what's turned into is just like, it just tickles me day in and day out. And you're right. It can, as we grow and more people depend on us, clients and team members, and we still have families and all that stuff, it can get hard, but it's work, but we asked for it. You and I say that to each other, we asked for this, no question.
Well, but it also keeps us tied to the people that we work with and our clients every day, because, they work hard too. I think that's one of the things, the funny things that is real interesting to me is when somebody signs up for a coaching session, they kind of start in, we'll start talking about their mission. And the first thing I do is usually I'll say, well, tell me what it is you guys do in 10 words or less. And they'll kind of move around. Sometimes they have it down. Every once in a while, they've got it down cold. Sometimes they don't. And we kind of start there, and then we start talking about it. And at the very end, they'll go, yeah, I really thought we were going to talk about trips, and we never even got there. But golly, I learned so much today. And, and it's like,
yeah,
it's just, this is what we do. We want to make sure that you can go out here and help you to do it, because it is hard. And if I can, I believe with all my heart that nonprofits are the safety net of society. It's not the government. See, everybody gets tied up, and I think there's a big dialogue going on. I don't believe that for a second. I believe it's the nonprofits that they provide the safety net and the services that private industry and the government can't do, because they do it with a heart, helping them to get those resources in today's time, which is different. It's different than it was, it's different than what it was 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
And
Yep,
to see
exactly.
all that.
No question.
And so if we can share all the things that we get to see and learn and how it works, and, because we talk about stuff, we have stuff that doesn't work at all. I mean, we talk about saying, well, we thought we'd just try something, it doesn't work. And we're willing to try. We're willing to try, though. The reason it's worth it, because it's hard, is because that's kind of where our purpose, I believe, comes from in our company. And we're able to share that with all of the people that we work with on a daily basis. I'm talking about our employees and partners, is that they're on the same page, that they understand that, yeah, they're doing one piece of it, but that piece is what is helping generate millions of dollars that these nonprofits are going out to buy baby formula and diapers, and provide education and services that would never happen, would never happen without that. And so I just, it's what kind of gets me motivated in those times when it's hard, because I have those times. I mean, I've been where I'm sitting there going, God, I really don't want to do this right now. And I don't want to sit there and call the
I get you.
department workforce of Wisconsin and tell them that we do not have an employee there. I don't really want to do that, but it's what my job is. And so I've got to deal with it. But that kind of stuff comes up because when we do all that, that allows us to do the fun stuff, which is to, talk to these nonprofits and work with the leaders and people that are trying.
For sure.
And it's real fun because they want to know. They're like, I want to do, because they believe in what they're doing. And that's when it's really fun.
I love all that. The G in HGA has always stood for gratitude. And I think I'll do a pretty good job of articulating this, but I've noticed something.
You're the ambassador of gratitude for our company. I hope so.
Thank you, brother. Well, it comes naturally. So, I mean, I was given a gift, and I'm trying to use it as much as possible. Right. Of course. And I'm beyond grateful for it, beyond thankful for that gift. And it's always stood for that, and it's worked for us. And what's interesting, the more that life has progressed and the more people that the number has grown as far as how many people depend on me, depend on us, clients, our team, our family, the fact that that's all happened and all grown at the same pace in my personal life, in my professional life, all the above with this company, and it's made my life mean more. I'm just so grateful. My life is, since I've met you, since we started the company, the people that we've come into contact with, I would never, like we've said this multiple times on this episode, I never thought in a million years it would turn out like this. And we're right in the thick of it, and it's only going to get better. I still feel that. I still have that attitude, that startup mentality, and I'm just so grateful because it's meant so much to my life. I'm grateful for everyone that's listening. I'm grateful for everyone that's going to be listening at some point and comes into contact with us. And I really, really mean that, man, from the depths of my soul and how much it's meant to us, because my life has improved. It's just so cool how your professional life can bleed into your personal life this way, and how my life has just become exponentially more enjoyable. And it wasn't bad to begin with. Do you know what I mean? So I'm really, really thankful that you did not become a brain surgeon, because if I met you in that place, I would have had some problems.
Poor people there's some poor people out there that have had brain surgery, probably glad that didn't happen to you, because I probably would have messed it up.
I'm really grateful you're not a fireman anymore. So I'm grateful for you, brother. And I'm grateful for everyone on our team.
I appreciate that. Well, you too. It's right back to you.
Yeah.
I think that purpose, I remember we said this in an episode here a while back. I mean, it's been a while back. If what you're doing, especially if you're in the nonprofit world and you don't really believe in what you're doing, then get out and go do something else. 'Cause it's too hard if you don't.
I would.
If you're doing this for a paycheck and that's the only reason, don't do it. Go do something else. Get out of the nonprofit space. Go work for, or go find a nonprofit that you want to work for and be a part of their mission that you want to do it, because otherwise it's hard. Because people ask, sometimes go, well, I'm thinking about getting the nonprofit space. I want to do that. I'm like, why do you want to do that? Well, if they don't say, they go, well, because I want to get rich. I'm like, you're in the wrong business. But if they say, I want to, I really want to help people, and this is what it is. I'm like, then go find a mission that you really want to help, that you really want to believe in, and then go do that one, because you're not going to do it for the pay.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it for the pay, then you're probably in it for the wrong reason. And when it does get hard, and it does get in the
Inevitably.
deal, it gets in that difficulty and that deal where you're really having to stretch and dig deep. If you don't believe in what you're doing, you're just not going to do it.
No question.
And you're going to take a shortcut.
Yeah.
And, and we've seen that with people we've worked with, that, you can tell they're just kind of mailing it in, and the results are that.
Yeah.
But the ones that dig deep, that really are willing to put the work in and go to do it, they do incredible things.
Yeah. As we go around the sun, those are the people that we're really gravitating towards. We go around the sun over and over and over, and we see it. And yeah, the numbers and the output it doesn't lie. Man, it's really fun to watch. It's really, really fun to watch people succeed. That's for sure. It's been a joy, and it will continue to be so. So happy we're on the ride together, brother.
Well, if it's not, we'll do something different.
Well, you and I also made a pact that if we couldn't have fun doing it, we weren't going to do it. You know what I mean?
We weren't going to do it. Yeah. If we couldn't have fun and enjoy it, we were not going to do it anymore.
And we like to be silly, and we'll continue to be silly on these episodes. It was really, really good. I appreciate you, brother. Thanks so much for sharing that. I wanted folks to hear a little bit about our own origin stories and how we got into fundraising, and the story is still being written. So thanks so much, everyone that's a part of it. You know who you are. We're really grateful for it. So thanks so much. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks for you, brother. Thank you too, Bailey, behind the scenes. We'll talk to everybody soon.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you love our podcast, click the download button, rate us, and follow us on social media at HGA Fundraising. Get out there, start fundraising, and raise more money. See you next time.